Helena opened her eyes in the early morning light. As she listened to the breathing of her daughter Sophia, who was sound asleep next to her, she noticed a shadow in the corner of the room. Alexios was standing quietly by the window. His eyes were fixed on Helena, watching her expressionlessly. She felt a shiver run through her, but she tried not to show it. This man, who had once been so loving, now seemed like a stranger to her. This house was not as warm and safe as it used to be. Helena felt she could no longer stay here, but escape was not easy. Alexios had been more suspicious lately, watching his movements carefully, checking their phones, questioning who they were talking to. Helena felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't admit it even to herself. She closed her eyes again and took a deep breath. Something inside her whispered that soon everything would change. But how and when? That she didn't know. Helena felt Alexios's gaze on her as she stirred her tea in the kitchen. Helena now knew that none of her actions went unnoticed. She took a deep breath and sipped her tea. Fear was growing inside her, but she couldn't show it to him. She would leave, take Sophia with her, and get away from this house forever. But how? Alexios controlled every step he took. That night, as he tossed and turned in his bed, he remembered the sentence he had written in his diary. "I must get out of here." She had to plan, but Alexios would know if she made the slightest mistake. At that moment, he approached her, sat on the edge of the bed and asked in a low voice, "Are you hiding something from me, Helena?" She closed her eyes and tried to calm herself. "No," she said with a slight smile. But Alexios's eyes did not believe her. The tension was growing in the silence. Helena knew that she was going down a path from which there was no turning back. Helena decided that the safest time to escape was at midnight. She quietly got out of bed, went to Sophia's room and gently took her little girl in her arms. She had packed her suitcase in advance, taking only the most necessary items. Her heart was racing, her breathing was erratic. As she made her way to the door, she wondered if her every step was too loud. She took a deep breath and tried to open the door. But just then, a shadow from the hallway froze her. Alexios was standing just outside the door. His eyes shone menacingly even in the darkness. "Where are you going, Helena?" he asked, his voice low but threatening. Helena's blood ran cold. She felt she had nowhere to run. "I just wanted some air," she mumbled, but her voice was shaking. Alexios took a step closer. "Don't make a fool of me," he said sternly. Helena tried to back away, but she couldn't move because she was carrying Sophia in her arms. The man closed the door, completely blocking her escape route. That was the moment when Helena realized that all her plans had failed. Helena gasped. Sophia stirred slightly in her arms, but did not wake from her sleep. Alexios kept his eyes on her, following her every little movement. "Were you trying to leave me?" he whispered, his voice cold and controlling. Helena wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. He reached out quickly and grabbed her wrist. "You can't do this to me," he said. Alexios grabbed Helena's throat and began to squeeze. She struggled, but Alexios's grip was as tight as iron. When Sophia moved with a soft moan, Helena's eyes widened in fear. She didn't want to wake the little girl. In a moment of panic, Helena tried to push Alexios away, but he pushed her against the wall. "If you leave, no one will find you," he whispered in her ear. Helena's eyes filled with tears. She resisted, but Alexios was stronger than her. In a few seconds, everything went black. The last thing she saw before she passed out was Sophia still asleep in her arms. Alexios carefully placed Helena's lifeless body on the bed. He left the room slowly, each step calm and controlled. He opened the door and rummaged through the house, creating a messy scene. Things were overturned on the floor, as if everything had been scattered by intruders. In the corner of the room, the doors of a small cupboard were left open, as if someone had rummaged through everything in a hurry. Tying his hands, he called the police and shouted in panic. "Thieves broke into our house. They killed my wife," he announced. The tremor in his voice showed that he was a good actor, but his composure was becoming more and more apparent by the minute. When the police arrived, Alexios was still tied up and in a panic. But the detectives quickly realized something was wrong. Helena's smartwatch showed that her heart had stopped beating earlier than usual and that the time of death was earlier. Strange details at the crime scene and Alexios's contradictory statements caught the detectives' attention. They knew that although everything seemed perfect, something was missing. The confidence Alexios felt inside him soon began to crumble. A hidden tension began to permeate the air throughout the house. As the investigation progressed, Alexios's lies were exposed one by one. Smartwatch data, DNA samples from Helena's neck, and fingerprints from the neighborhood all pointed to Alexios. In addition, searches of the house revealed that everything had been organized in a planned manner. One day, in the interrogation room, Alexios finally broke down. With tears in his eyes, he said, "She couldn't leave me. She was everything to me," he said. You could see the anger and fear in his eyes. The court sentenced Alexios to life imprisonment. But the loss of Helena and Sophia's motherlessness left a void that even justice could not fill.